Okay, so here's why I think the defense did an absolutely horrible job in the Darun Ravi trial. First of all, I think they really did not factor in anti-Asian bias. And I just think that was an incredibly stupid thing. As somebody who once taught in a school that was majority Asian, and also who was in a relationship with a guy from China for a couple of years, I assure you that anti-Asian bias in the United States, even in very sort of in environments where there are a lot of Asian people, is a very real thing. And I think that in some ways the prosecutor or the defense attorney, Mr. Altman, really relied a lot on anti-gay bias and really is counting on there being no anti-Asian bias. And I think that that's simply foolish. In some ways, I wish that Darun had been given a better defense because I think there probably was a better defense to make. I certainly wish that he had not started with seven middle-aged Asian dudes, Indian dudes. What on earth was that supposed to prove? Other than the only people we could find around whom Darun did not say horrible homophobic things all the time were business associates of his father. I mean, think about it. Even if, like, you're the most homophobic person in the world, are the business associates of your father the people around whom you're going to say your horrible anti-gay epithets? Especially, that was just an incredibly weak. And especially, even if you had to do, really, you couldn't find a single teacher, you couldn't find a single coach, you couldn't find a woman, you couldn't find somebody under the age of 25. It was just, and in fact, the failure to produce this very close gay friend. That Dharun claimed to have was just incredibly stupid, and then to play the entire Darun's entire police statement again was odd, because for most of us that meant watching him lie. Now, I do want to point out again that Mr. Altman really, to a very distasteful degree, put the victims on trial. The jury, I think, was supposed to think it was just incredibly distasteful that Mr. Clementi and MB, his first name, he managed to work in, notice, into his closing argument today. That was gross. But the it was just you were supposed to disapprove of Tyler. He said that Tyler should have known that he shouldn't do this again, that he shouldn't have a guy over to his own room. And I think that may be Mr. Altman's personal bias, but I think counting on the jury to share that bias was foolish. Was just foolish, and not thinking that was going to, if the jury were inclined to view your client as homophobic, to think that coming across as homophobic yourself was not going to rub off on your client and make your client seem more homophobic, I think was just a very gutsy move. Now, I don't know. I mean, frankly, I can't tell you amongst your jury which is going to be stronger, anti-Asian bias or anti-gay bias. As a gay person in a relationship with an Asian person, I can tell you there have certainly been situations, there are ways in which I think it really would depend on the situation. I think they may just identify with Tyler as white, as the white kid in a sea of Asian faces being mean. I think they may identify with him as being... I think they may not disapprove of him just because he wanted to have a guy over and fool around. And I think taking somebody and describing him as someone who looks like a homeless person, as they did with MB, Tyler's liaison, I think it was mean, and I don't think it's going to do well for Dharun. So that's kind of my utterly amateur. Who on earth would be interested in that opinion of what the defense in the Dharun Ravi trial did? They just closed. So they just finished their closing arguments and waiting for the prosecution to begin closing arguments. Oh boy, total autistic special interest. Flappy flap 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 flap. All right, bye bye.